Welcome back to Sermon Rewind. My name is Todd, and with me, as always, or most of the time, is Jordan.
Most of the time.
Well, we've had a guest every once in a while.
Fair enough. Top of the morning, Todd.
How you doing?
Doing well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So we're still in Acts, to the ends of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And the passage today was Acts 4, verses 23 to 31. Correct?
You got it.
All right. A little shorter, not
Yeah.
as much toil and trouble for our reader this last week.
They were grateful.
The big idea, bold, expectant prayer guides the life of the church.
Perfectly stated.
Perfectly stated.
Yeah.
And you didn't even alter it grammatically.
No, not at all.
And hard to argue with.
Depends on who you ask, but
I mean, I feel like that's not something people would necessarily push back on.
you'd be surprised.
No, I probably wouldn't, but
maybe
that's okay. All right. Your first point, acknowledging God's faithfulness in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I was talking to somebody about this. I was actually discussing the sermon with somebody after worship.
Just want to make sure I'm still alive.
I know, right? Crazy. I guess the question is, what about people who really haven't had happy lives?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Are they able to just say that? Because the person that I was talking to was somebody who, I wouldn't say they've had an easy life. They've worked hard and they've put in the effort and they've walked through all the stuff of life. But they haven't necessarily had a lot of tragedy, not a lot of definitive hardship. And so it's probably easier for them to say, yeah, I've had a pretty nice life. Thank you to God's faithfulness, right?
Mhm.
Like we associate God's faithfulness with, say, material wealth and relative health and comfort.
Fair enough. Yeah.
What about the person who grew up in a broken home, has struggled with crime or addiction, disease? They've had a sad life. They're unhappy.
Sure.
Can they say that?
Can they still reflect and recall God's past faithfulness?
Right. When it feels like
yeah.
they've had kind of a very bad hand dealt to them their whole life.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one. At least in the sense of the personal part of their story. I think it's important to know that when you're thinking on this, you are always grafting your story into the larger story and narrative of God's faithfulness. That's why it's not helpful for any of us to just look back on our own experiences because we're pretty narrowly focused. I'm not saying that person is, but we look at it from a larger scope. We look at God's faithfulness from the moment we begin reading Genesis chapter 1. And so we reflect on not only perhaps maybe the struggle that our however many years it has gone, but we also look on the way that he, shepherded the nation of Israel and the way that he cared for sinners and he walked people through all kinds of broken circumstances, right? So God's faithfulness is not stand or die based only on our years, but it's certainly a part of it. So I would say to that person, like, yeah, you might have had a tough go of it. And I would argue that many others have had a tough go as well. And yet what you see if you look back far enough is that God still continues to shepherd them through.
So then is it a question of you're looking at God's faithfulness to others sometimes? Are there people that kind of, not exclusively, but almost always have to say, yes, God has been faithful to other people, or at least in ways that I perceive faithfulness, right?
Oh, well, that's a mixed bag. I mean, you've got two really different questions there, right? Like how you perceive faithfulness, like I said, maybe very like centralized on yourself, maybe very
Sure.
internally focused.
Sure.
So like I said, broadening it to everybody within your spiritual family, i.e. from the beginning of scripture till modern day, yeah, you have a whole breadth to look at. Now you could say, oh, well, that's only looking outward. That's only looking at other people. So am I seriously supposed to celebrate how God's been kind to other people and not me? I think the person who is in the faith, even if their life has been rough, should still, full of the Holy Spirit, be able to say, thanks be to God, I'm still here. And he's been gracious and kind to me and allowing me to see and revel in his son, Jesus. Yeah, we may not have health or prosperity or 15 kids and a lovely life to speak of, but that doesn't mean that grace hasn't abounded in the midst of our circumstance. We should not use one particular criteria as a means to evaluate that.
So do we really understand, though, God's faithfulness? I mean, abstractly as an idea, we can just say God is faithful, right?
Yeah.
But doesn't that sort of imply that we understand God's will? Because we can look at all sorts of circumstances and say, okay, this young person who is tragically killed or something like that.
Okay.
These people that do really bad things but are still, rewarded with a nice, comfortable life type of deal,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
It sort of suggests that we understand why certain things happen. And I feel like we don't necessarily, because faithful doesn't necessarily equate to a particular experience.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I can stand by you even if I chew you out and, just express, my love and friendship that way. So does it, if we're sort of thinking about that, are we still, you said we're looking at it through our own experience, right?
Regretfully, yeah.
Regretfully. So can we even understand what God's faithfulness means, aside from maybe just the big picture abstract?
Yeah, because I actually don't think it's as abstract as you're saying. I mean, faithfulness is built purely off of promises kept, right? So faithfulness is not like a random shot in the dark. We don't call him faithful abstractly. No one is faithful abstractly. We call him faithful because he said he'd do something and he's done it. And he said he'd be there and he showed up. Now, if you sit across the table from a person who says, man, I've been praying and praying and praying and God's never come to my aid, then one of two things is true. Either that testimony is true and God has never shown up, therefore everything we've ever confessed as true is void, or that person does not yet know how faithful God has been to his word. But it's not abstract. I think that would be a major mistake. Sure, there's things within like eternity we don't understand, but no, it's pretty much spelled out. If God said, I'll be there for you when you are desperately in need of me, and he shows up, even in unique and different ways, then yeah, he's faithful because he kept his word.
So that actually is a good transition to point number 2, petitioning God's favor in the present.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned somebody praying for something over and over and over again. And you've known these people, and I've known these people, and we have been these people where we've petitioned God over and over.
Yeah.
We've talked about this in a variety of different settings. Should our prayer just be, your will be done, over and over and over again?
I think it would save us a lot of heartache.
Well, it would, and time.
Mm-hmm.
Should we just repeat that over and over again? In other words, I mean, the paired question of that is, should we pray for specific things? If God is sovereign, if God has a plan, should we even list those that are sick, those that are in prison, those that are struggling with everything, right?
Yeah.
Or should we just say over and over again, I don't get it. I don't know why this is happening to me, to somebody else. Your will be done. Should that be the prayer?
I think both of them are right. And maybe even a better way of saying it, I think sandwiched together, you have the most honest and sincere prayer life, right? You have to almost look at this in the same way that you would look at your own child coming and crawling up on your leg, before they go to bed at night as a child, right? You want that child to tell you things that are bothering them. You want that child to tell you that they're scared if they are. You want that child to tell you that they're in need of something. They're hungry. They're not feeling great. Could you rub my back? Could you, pray for me? Could you sing songs to me? You want your child to have that kind of intimate relationship with you. But you also want that child to trust you when you say, there's nothing for you to be afraid of. I promise you can go to bed. There's, I know you're not feeling good, but honestly, I think it's because you're just tired. Go to bed. You want the child to live in that balance where we can tell you everything that we feel, but we also in the same breath can say, well, I know mom or dad is going to handle it.
But I feel like those are two different approaches to something, because you're talking about, you want people to be able to tell God, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
That's not the same as a request.
Oh, it totally
right?
is.
I don't think so, because I could say to you, I'm in pain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I could just say that as an idea.
Right.
I'm in pain. And you could say, okay, I understand that concept, right? I could say to God, I'm in pain. That's different than me saying, God, please take the pain away. And how then do I resolve those two things?
No, it's not.
It is.
No, I throw in a flag on that. No, it's not. If you're saying I'm in pain, there is no underlying, man, I hope this continues. Pain reflected is Like it's a desire to share it. It's a desire to, in some way, for people to either empathize with you or, if capable, for someone to reach out and help.
Okay, but that's still, like, you could say to me, how's it going? And I could say, I'm in pain, right? Because we're friends. I'll tell you the truth, right?
Yeah.
I could just say, oh, not too bad, just doing whatever type of thing. But I'll say, no, I'm in pain. I don't expect you to do anything about it.
Only
you can't
because
do
you know
about
I
it.
can't. Exactly.
Right.
But if
even
I could, you would.
Right. But again, I know God could.
Sure.
But it feels presumptuous for me to say, God, I'd like you to take this pain away. Maybe I'm supposed to be in pain forever. Maybe that's part of, Apostle Paul. We don't know what Apostle Paul dealt with, but he dealt with something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what the life is supposed to be.
Which is why those prayers sandwiched together is important.
Sure. But again, what am I actually asking for? Am I asking for relief? Right? God's favor in the present. God's favor.
Yep.
It's always going to be through my lens. I'm a sinner saved by grace.
Yeah.
All I'm going to think about is I want to be comfortable. I want to be happy. I don't want to have a bunch of struggles.
Yeah.
God, could you make my life really nice?
Right.
So I don't have to deal with stuff.
And the only reason you feel that way is because you are, whether you're conscious of it or not, you're reflecting on the fact that deep within your heart is a knowledge that this is how it's supposed to be. It is supposed to be comfortable and filled with joy and full of life everlasting. It's supposed to be that way. So you can't help but cry out for that. And I think your Father in heaven goes, yes, good. I know you've tapped into that. In the same way that at the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus did both of those things at the same time. He said, if this cup can be taken from me, my goodness, if we can do anything other than what we're about to do, Father, let's do that. But not my will, but yours be done. That's the tension and balance. Todd, like, you'd have every reason in the world to say, I am in pain. I really want to be out of this pain. I really do. Everything in my heart echoes that there is a pain-free life that should be here. But I trust you. And you know what is best. And I have lived my years under your guidance and care, and I'll continue. So whatever you have for me, I'm going to walk it out with you.
So I think, again, and I love to go to grammatical things, but
Sure.
the conjugation there, the but, that cancels out the first part.
No, not at all.
It does. It has to go hand in hand. I have to say, I don't trust myself to have good intention for my requests sometimes.
Okay.
Maybe for other people, right?
Yeah.
Asking for somebody else to be out of, pain. That doesn't necessarily benefit me per se. I feel like I can pray for other people and say, hey, this is a good person that wants to serve you, and they're distracted by the fact that they're dealing with this thing.
Sure.
Could you, relieve them so they can continue to serve? Now, if other people want to pray that prayer for me, that's okay. I don't love to pray that prayer. I don't love to say, I would like this, God. I feel like I should. Just skip over that part. And
Why?
Because God has a plan.
For sure, but you're being honest.
I am and I'm not, because I feel like, again, that's a little bit of a caveat. I feel like I'm trying to talk God into it. It's like, okay, I know you have a plan, and I repeat that over and over again, but I think your plan would be just a little bit better if this happened. Because again, in my humanness, I focus on my own needs.
Let me not be condescending, though. Todd, as anyone knows, you're not going to talk him out of something he intends to do.
I understand that.
But it's good to get that out there.
But I don't want to have my mind dwell on that possibility. That's the thing. I mean, sure. Again, I'm not saying I don't want to say to God, hey, just being honest, God, I'm not having a lot of fun right now with these things in my life. Okay? I don't necessarily assume that you're going to do things the way that I want them done. But I think sometimes when people do ask, they still kind of get lost in this makes perfect sense to me that God would want to do this, because it doesn't make sense to me that this is happening anyway.
Okay.
So that, I think, is the danger, is that we can convince ourselves that we are asking worthy things. And again, overall, maybe we are, right? Asking for healing or relief from pain so that we can continue to do ministry, that's a good thing.
Or that we can just continue in general. It is a good thing.
Sure. But again, you know people.
Mhm.
I know people. We are people.
Yeah.
We ask for things sometimes for selfish reasons,
Of course.
whether we verbalize it or not. We can
Yep.
do the prayer,
Yep.
right, where we say, and I'm not going to make deals with God. I'm not going to say, if you heal me, I'm just going to double down on ministry. I should double down on ministry anyway.
Right. It's not a transaction.
No.
Yeah.
And I'm also not going to say, well, I'm going to convince myself that if this were not a burden for me or for other people, they would be even more focused on things. Yeah, they might. There are people that do serve out of gratitude after they overcome something. But I also know that people also then, they kind of get soft about it, right?
Yeah.
They get comfortable.
So here's my problem. And I know you probably want to move past this,
I do.
but I can't help but ask, like, if one of your children, small, innocent, full of life, crawled up on your lap and you knew there was something going on inside of them and they were maybe questioning whether or not they should share it, would that bother you as a parent? Wouldn't you want them to share it, even if it came out to be somewhat self-centered?
Sure. But again, we're talking about sharing. We're not talking about asking for something to be fixed.
And you're telling me right now you wouldn't want them to ask for something to be fixed from you?
They can ask. I don't have the power to grant.
Exactly.
That's different. I might.
Yeah.
I might.
But that's the thing. You wouldn't know if you didn't ask.
But there are certain things where, it's nice that they can tell me. I don't have that power. There's very few things that we can do.
But relationships that have any meaning are not built on guarantees.
No, I get that.
Yeah. So that's all I'm saying. I just don't want to dissuade from the fact that it should be right and good for you to say, Lord, I want this. I want this so bad, but I trust you. And whatever you intend to do, I'm going to walk this out with you because I know you have my best intentions in mind. I know that. So, but I still got to be honest with you. I'm going through it and I would really love it if you would be so kind and so generous and so benevolent. And this did not get in the middle of anything you were trying to accomplish. Oh, if you would bring the kingdom close to me and let me have this, that would be fantastic.
I still think the prayer should be work on my heart more than, work on whatever it is that I'm dealing with.
And it can be both.
It can. Yeah. But again, I think our focal point should always be your will be done in general.
Sure. And I would at least agree with you that you need to land the plane there.
You could always just pray that prayer. Whatever's going on, God, your will be done. And we may not understand it ever, like in our earthly life. All right, last point. Depend on God's power for the future. Okay?
Yeah.
So I guess the question I have here is, do we need to think about the future very much? I mean, again, I think about the passage, today or tomorrow we will do X, Y, and Z, that sort of thing.
Sure.
Shouldn't this always just kind of be about the moment, where you are right now, not worrying about what I'm going to do tomorrow, next week, a month, a year from now? It's about, because you're talking about, you gave 3 points: preparing your heart for prayer, planting your feet in prayer, persisting and returning to prayer.
Yeah.
Shouldn't this whole thing be very present oriented?
It should be, but the whole purpose is not just for you to have a one-time or an inconsequential once-in-a-while interaction. It's about tuning behavior and heart, right? So the hope is that in your prayer, you just said it yourself, right? Should our prayer not always be your will be done? Should it not always be kind of a shaping and a changing so that we're always kind of just leaning into that? And I would say in some regard, yes, that's true, because ultimately what you want to do is you want to create a dependence on Jesus. Prayer, as a force of habit, creates a dependency to come back and to say, I don't know what's going on. I wish I understood. If you could give me X, Y, and Z, that would be awesome. But whatever you have for me is going to be awesome. Because that sort of creates a narrative in our lives that say, I've got to return, and I've got to return, and I've got to return. And as much as people want to mature and grow out of that, I think that the whole infrastructure of the relationship between God and man is that we would always keep coming back. We'd always keep coming home. The lights would always be on and we'd always come running. Like, I think that's the goal. So when I say depend on God for the future, right? Or depend on his power in the future, it's not that you're always looking forward to the future. It's that you're behaving in such a way that there's a consistent rhythm of returning to him, no matter what comes in the future. You lose a loved one, you're going back in prayer. You are sick yourself, you're going back in prayer. You're full of joy and you feel like everything before you is golden paved roads, you're still going back to him in dependence. Like that's a rhythm you want expressed in your life. And the only way that happens is if you kind of build that, that behavior beforehand.
Yeah. And I think, I know you always shy away from like checklist stuff because you even said it.
Right.
I don't want people to just think, oh, I'll just do these things that Jordan said and then I'm good.
Yeah.
This is one I think you could and you can and you did to a certain extent say, if you want a checklist thing that is foolproof, here's how you do it. You just pray all day, every day.
Yeah.
Very, very well. But that's
I get what you're saying, but
yeah. But that's the thing.
Mhm.
Like you could give that as a checklist item.
Sure.
Either, in the future where you just say, hey, you want something that you want to just check off? Well, just pray all throughout the day.
Yeah.
Every opportunity you can think of, every time, whatever you have to do to remind yourself. Alarms, write it on the calendar, put sticky notes, on your steering wheel, whatever it is. Pray all day, every day. Very Brother Lawrence, right? But
you can't fault him.
But you can't fault him on that. And I think that's something that, I struggle with too, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a little prayer time and then I'm done. As opposed to saying, look, I'm going to try to keep communion with God all throughout the day.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Thanks again for joining us on Sermon Rewind. We're here on Sunday mornings. If you want to come by the great city of Bellflower, we have corporate worship at 10. We also are here on Wednesday nights. We start at 5:45 with some dinner activities for all ages. Thanks again for joining us on Sermon Rewind.
Hope to see you soon.